Her name is Eleanor Hayes, a 29-year-old rising executive living in the heart of Chicago, with a corner office, a promotion in hand, and a future paved by her own relentless determination. But in a split second on a rain-slicked highway, everything changes. A devastating car crash shatters both her legs and, more painfully, her illusions about family. As she lies in a hospital bed, broken and immobile, her parents make a chilling choice. They leave her behind to enjoy a month-long vacation in New Zealand, telling her not to call them while they're happy. The people she counted on most abandon her in her darkest hour, forcing her to face physical agony, emotional collapse, and total isolation. But what happens next is something no one saw coming. Would your family choose you when it matters most? Let us know. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. And buckle up. This story will stay with you. Chicago in early spring had always held a sense of renewal for Eleanor Hayes. At 29, she stood at the pinnacle of the life she had carefully and relentlessly built for herself. Her office on the 27th floor overlooked the city skyline, and the golden brass plate on her new office door read, Senior Marketing Executive. A title she had earned through years of staying late, taking the projects no one wanted and delivering results no one thought possible. Her desk, sleek and minimal, reflected her organized mind. She liked order. She liked control. More than anything, Eleanor liked knowing her hard work meant something. Her younger sister, Madison, had just graduated from NYU with a communications degree. At 22, she was carefree, spontaneous, the kind of girl who packed a bag in 20 minutes and flew to Mexico just because a friend dared her. Madison had always been the wild heart of the family, charming, a little chaotic but undeniably magnetic. And their parents, Richard and Linda Hayes, adored her for it. Not that they ever admitted it. Eleanor had noticed the favoritism for years, tucked into the corners of family interactions. The way her parents framed Madison's mistakes as learning experiences, while Eleanor's minor missteps felt like personal failures. Her mom once told her, "Madison needs more encouragement than you. You've always just figured things out." A compliment dressed in neglect. Still, Eleanor had learned to live with it. Thrive even. While Madison switched majors twice and got monthly allowances from their parents, Eleanor worked 2 part-time jobs through college and managed her own financial aid. Despite the imbalance, she never let bitterness take root. She was proud of Madison. And when their parents suggested a family vacation to New Zealand to celebrate both their milestones, Eleanor said yes without hesitation. It would be the first time in years they'd traveled together. Hiking trails, scenic lakes, movie locations they all loved. It sounded idyllic. They had dinner together the night before everything changed. Linda made her signature roast and mashed potatoes. The house smelled like rosemary and red wine. Richard uncorked a bottle he'd been saving and raised a toast to our 2 brilliant daughters. The conversation was warm, filled with stories, updates, and laughter. But beneath it, Eleanor noticed things, subtle as always. When she mentioned a major campaign she'd be spearheading in LA, her mom offered a polite smile and turned to ask Madison about her post-grad travel plans. When Richard refilled wine glasses, Madison's was full to the brim. Eleanor's was barely a sip. Even dessert, a double-layer chocolate cake, came with uneven portions. Madison's slice towered, hers was modest. Individually, these things were forgettable. Together, they whispered a message Eleanor had heard her whole life. Madison shines brighter. But that night she brushed it off. She drove home under a light drizzle, thinking about her presentation the next morning. Her briefcase sat beside her on the passenger seat, neatly packed. In the rearview mirror she saw her own eyes, tired but content. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Madison, "Best dinner ever. So glad we're all finally doing something as a family again." Eleanor smiled at the message. She wanted to believe it. She really did. When she got home, she unpacked her things and noticed the greeting card her parents had given Madison still tucked into her purse, covered in glitter, full of handwritten praise. She reached into her own bag, searching for the card they gave her. But there was none. She checked again, slower this time, like maybe she'd missed it. That absence felt heavier than the late nights, the overlooked achievements, the "you're so independent" brush-offs. It wasn't about the card. It was about what it represented. But Eleanor wasn't the type to spiral. She placed the card on her coffee table, poured herself a glass of water, and sat down to review her presentation slides. It was close to midnight when she went to bed. Rain tapped steadily on her windows. She fell asleep thinking about the mountain ranges in New Zealand and whether she should buy new hiking boots. Just 15 minutes from her apartment the next morning, her life was about to be violently upended. The rain had thickened by the time Eleanor merged onto the I-90 that morning. The highway was nearly empty, just streaks of headlights cutting through the early gray. She had left early to prep for her client presentation, slides backed up, blazer pressed and coffee untouched in the cup holder. She tapped the steering wheel lightly in rhythm with the wipers, her mind focused not on the road but on the words she'd used to open the pitch. It happened fast. A blur of movement to her right. Then two glowing eyes. A deer bounding into her lane too close to react. She yanked the wheel instinctively hard to the left and that was when she lost control. The tires failed to grip. The car spun, hydroplaning across the slick surface, swerving into another lane. Time slowed. She remembered the strange silence that came with the spin, the sharp hiss of rubber and the panicked roar of her own heartbeat. Then, impact. Metal screamed as her car hit the guardrail. Another blow slammed her from the driver's side. The airbag exploded. Something cracked. Her body jerked against the seatbelt as her mind tried to catch up. And then darkness. There were flashes after that. Blue lights. Shouting. A taste of blood. The cold press of rain on her cheeks. Someone yelled her name, Eleanor? Stay with me, Eleanor. But her legs, she couldn't feel her legs. The fear hit her harder than the crash. The numbness wasn't pain. It was absence. Something was very wrong. Then nothing. When she opened her eyes again, it was to a harsh white ceiling and the rhythmic beep of machines. The light above her buzzed faintly, its flicker magnified by her splitting headache. She tried to move but her body screamed in protest. Her arms worked barely. Her legs didn't respond at all. A nurse approached, noticing she was awake. "Miss Hayes, you're in the ICU," she said gently. "You were in a car accident. You've been through surgery. You're stable now." Eleanor's voice cracked as she asked, "High legs?" The nurse's expression shifted. Compassion. But also gravity. Both legs sustained multiple fractures. Your right femur broke in 2 places. Your left leg suffered compound fractures in both the tibia and fibula. They've inserted rods and pins. The good news is there was no spinal damage. But recovery will take time. How long? Several months. You'll be in a wheelchair for a while. Then transition to a walker and eventually with therapy you'll regain full mobility. But it will be a long road. Eleanor stared at the ceiling. Her legs, her independence, everything that had defined her daily life, was gone at least for now. She processed it like a checklist. He always did. But the weight of it still sat on her chest. Later, a doctor entered explaining more details. Surgical procedures, infection risks, pain management. He told her a social worker would assist with post-discharge planning. He asked if someone from her family could come in to discuss next steps. Eleanor nodded. "They've been contacted, right?" she asked. "Yes. We reached out immediately after your admission." She waited. And waited. The clock moved sluggishly. Meals came and went. No visitors. No calls. Then finally after 5 hours they appeared. Her parents. Madison. They stepped into the room like visitors at a museum, quiet and distant, eyes scanning everything but her. Her mother carried a designer tote. Her father avoided looking at the 4 lines. "We were finalizing the New Zealand details," Linda offered, her voice light, too cheerful. "Didn't expect the call. It caught us in the middle of the itinerary deposit. We rushed here as soon as we could." Richard nodded and patted her hand, standing awkwardly near the foot of the bed. Madison stepped closer, eyes red, clearly shaken. "Ellie. I'm so sorry. Are you in pain?" Eleanor forced a smile and nodded. They stayed for 45 minutes. Her mother checked her watch. Her father stepped out twice to answer calls. Madison told a few stories trying to distract her, but her voice trembled. Before they left, Linda asked if there was anything she wanted from her apartment. Her tone suggested she hoped the list would be short. As they walked out, Eleanor closed her eyes. She wanted to believe it was shock. Logistics. That they needed time. But something was unraveling. Something colder. Something she wasn't ready to face just yet. She clung to one thought. Surely they wouldn't leave her to go on that trip now. She didn't know then that the worst was still ahead. 2 days later, the social worker entered Eleanor's hospital room holding a clipboard and a practiced smile. Her tone was professional, calm as she explained what discharge would involve: wound care, pain medication, mobility management. Eleanor listened carefully, nodding, internalizing every step. She always did well with structure. Then came the question that made her hesitate. Do you have someone at home who can help you for the first 2 weeks? A family member, roommate, partner? My parents, Eleanor answered without pause. They'll help. Of course. The social worker smiled and handed her a packet. That's great. Make sure they understand you'll need round-the-clock support at first. You shouldn't be left alone until you can transfer yourself safely. Eleanor nodded again, but a tight knot was forming in her chest. That afternoon her parents arrived. Madison followed behind, holding a bag of snacks and a folded sweater from Eleanor's apartment. Richard sat in the corner, avoiding eye contact, while Linda perched on the edge of the chair like she had somewhere else to be. We need to talk, Linda began, folding her hands over her lap. About the New Zealand trip. Eleanor tensed. We've thought about it, she continued, and we're going to go ahead as planned. We've already delayed our departure by 3 days, and the deposits are non-refundable. Eleanor stared at her. You're still going? We'll help get you set up at home before we leave, Richard interjected quickly. Everything you need will be within reach. You're strong, Eleanor. You've always been so independent. Her heart sank. The social worker said I shouldn't be alone. I can't walk. I can't even shower without help. What happens if I fall? You'll manage, Linda said almost dismissively. You can order delivery. Use dry shampoo. You don't need someone babysitting you. Madison looked between them, her expression uneasy. Maybe we could postpone a few more weeks. Just until she's stable. Linda gave her a sharp look that silenced her instantly. Madison has been looking forward to this for months. She only graduates once. Eleanor's voice shook. You're leaving me alone after I nearly died. Richard cleared his throat and avoided her eyes. We've extended the trip to a month. It made sense financially. If we're going all the way there. Eleanor felt as if the room had tilted sideways. A month. They were abandoning her for an entire month. I'll be alone for a month? She asked, her voice barely audible. You won't be alone, Linda replied, her voice cool. You have friends. Coworkers. You can call someone. I asked you to help. We've done everything we can, Richard said, gesturing vaguely toward the room. The doctor said you mainly need rest now. Eleanor couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then Linda said the words that would brand themselves into her memory. We're going to enjoy this trip. Don't call us while we're happy there. We don't want negativity ruining it. She said it without cruelty, just clarity, as if she were setting a boundary. Richard nodded in agreement. You've always been able to handle things. This is no different. The next morning they left. They brought frozen meals, arranged a tray near the couch, and handed her a medication chart like they were leaving a pet with a neighbor. Madison hugged her tightly, whispered, I'm sorry, then followed them out the door. The sound of it closing was louder than anything Eleanor had heard since the crash. That first night alone was a brutal awakening. She struggled to reach her pills. She tried to heat up a meal but couldn't get to the microwave. She gave up and ate crackers with warm water. Using the bathroom was excruciating. Transferring from the wheelchair to the toilet was a balancing act of agony. She nearly fell twice. She gave up on showering. By morning her surgical wounds throbbed with angry heat. The apartment, dim and cluttered, felt like a cage. The air itself was heavy, thick with silence. And over, like a chant she couldn't silence, their words echoed in her mind. Don't call us while we're happy. They hadn't just left. They had made it clear. Her pain was an inconvenience. Eleanor stared at the ceiling and whispered, They really left me. And this time no one answered. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of discomfort, exhaustion, and silence. Eleanor's apartment, once a sanctuary of independence, had become a landscape of obstacles. The coffee table now doubled as a medical station. The couch served as both bed and recovery zone. The wheelchair scraped against narrow doorways, and her bathroom might as well have been a mountain. The smallest tasks demanded strategy and effort. She had never known that boiling water could feel like a physical feat, or that retrieving a dropped sock could make her cry. She kept to the medication schedule as best she could, setting alarms on her phone. But even that became overwhelming. The bottles were hard to open, the dosages complicated. One afternoon she dropped a pill bottle. It rolled under the couch. She spent 30 minutes trying to retrieve it using a broom handle and a spatula. By the time she succeeded, she was trembling and soaked in sweat. Friends texted at first. "Thinking of you. Need anything?" She replied politely, thankful. But as the hours stretched into days, the messages slowed. Then stopped. She wasn't surprised. People meant well, but their lives kept moving. Her inbox at work began to fill up. First came a polite note from HR asking for an update on her condition. Then another, more direct, asking when she'd submit her physician's report to extend medical leave. She hadn't made the follow-up appointment. She couldn't. No rideshare service would take a passenger in a wheelchair. Accessible taxis were limited and charged triple. When she explained her situation to the clinic receptionist, the next available appointment was 3 weeks away. "Missing this checkup could jeopardize your recovery," the receptionist warned. But what choice did she have? She tried reaching out to community programs. Most had long waiting lists. Others required documentation she didn't have. Home health aides were too expensive without coverage. She had some savings, money set aside for a down payment on a condo, but that was vanishing fast. Insurance covered part of the surgery, but not the ambulance ride, not the post-discharge medical equipment, not the ongoing therapy. By the end of the first week, her apartment reflected her deteriorating state. Dishes piled up in the sink. Takeout containers cluttered the trash. She couldn't carry them out. Dust settled. Mold crept into corners. She hadn't washed her hair in over a week. Brushing her teeth became an ordeal. Sponge baths from the sink were a daily humiliation. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror no longer looked like her. Her eyes were sunken. Her skin had dulled. And her legs were still foreign. Heavy. Lifeless. Wrapped in bandages and metal and gauze. Sometimes she couldn't bear to look at them. She stopped answering messages. When Madison texted another photo, her on a kayak, grinning against a backdrop of turquoise water, Eleanor stared at the screen and deleted it. No caption. No check-in. Just a digital postcard from the life Eleanor had been locked out of. One night, the pain in her right leg flared unexpectedly. She fumbled for her medication. The bottle was just out of reach on the shelf. She stretched, twisted, reached, and knocked it over. The cap flew off. Pills scattered across the hardwood floor. She froze. Then stared. There they were. Scattered like candy. She couldn't reach a single one. Not from the chair. Not with her arm outstretched. Her hands began to shake. She stayed like that for nearly an hour. Just sitting. Staring. No strength to cry. No words. No solutions. Just stillness. And something darker. What if she just stopped? What if she let the pain grow? What if the world outside never noticed? She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. He didn't care. That night the apartment swallowed her. Time passed without sound. Shadows lengthened. Her phone buzzed once. Then twice. She didn't move. Somewhere outside, rain tapped lightly on the windows. In here there was only silence. And then, 3 days later, an unexpected sound. A knock at the door. Not loud. Not frantic. Just steady. Then a voice. "Eleanor? It's Rebecca. From work. Are you home?" Eleanor didn't answer right away. But the knock came again. Then again. And something inside her stirred. Faint, distant, but unmistakably human. She reached for the wheels. When Eleanor opened the door, her hands trembled on the wheelchair rims. She was keenly aware of her appearance. Hair matted, skin pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The apartment behind her was dim, cluttered, and heavy with silence. She almost didn't recognize the woman standing there. Rebecca Green. Not a close friend. Just a colleague from a few shared projects. Polite. Professional. The kind of person who sent thank you emails and always remembered your birthday in team meetings. Eleanor hadn't expected to see her. Certainly not here. Rebecca's eyes widened, but she caught herself quickly. No pity. Just concern. And a kind of quiet urgency. "Sorry to drop by like this," she said softly. "You missed the weekly check-in. Your emails stopped. People started worrying." Eleanor blinked. Words were stuck behind her teeth. All she managed was a nod. Rebecca stepped inside, carrying a canvas tote bag over one shoulder. The scent of something fresh followed her, citrus and soap and clean cotton. "I brought some groceries," she said, glancing around. "Didn't know what you had. Or didn't have." She set the bag on the counter and turned back to face Eleanor. The silence stretched. Then Rebecca did something simple. She knelt. Right there on Eleanor's cluttered floor, she began picking up the pills that had fallen days before. Sorting them by color. Placing them gently into a small bowl. That act, the smallness of it, the care, cracked something open. Eleanor began to cry. Not loudly. Not theatrically. But the kind of crying that creeps in slowly, silently, and then doesn't stop. Her breath caught. Her shoulders trembled. And all she could say again and again was, "I didn't know who to call." Rebecca didn't try to fix it. She just sat beside her, knees folded beneath her, and listened. Then she got to work. Over the next 2 hours she moved like someone who had done this before. She sorted the remaining medication. Set alarms on Eleanor's phone. Cleared the fridge of spoiled food. Washed the dishes. Took out the trash. Opened a window. The air shifted with every action, like something was finally beginning to breathe. She made Eleanor scrambled eggs and toast. "Eat," she said gently. "Please." Eleanor obeyed. And for the first time in nearly 2 weeks she tasted something warm, something that wasn't wrapped in plastic or soaked in shame. The salt of butter. The softness of real food. It made her eyes well again. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Rebecca paused, setting down the plate. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "The team was concerned," she said. "Janet, our supervisor, tried calling. So did Thomas from accounting. Stephanie left you 3 voice messages. I figured someone needed to show up." Eleanor swallowed hard. "I thought they didn't notice." "They noticed," Rebecca said. "They just didn't know how bad it was." There was no judgment in her tone. No self-righteousness. Only truth. That night, before leaving, Rebecca made a phone call from the edge of the couch. Eleanor heard snippets. "Yes, she's okay now. No, she hasn't had follow-up care. We'll need a plan." When she hung up, she turned to Eleanor. "Janet's organizing a rotation. Different people will stop by each day, check in, bring food, whatever you need. Her partner's a nurse. He's coming tomorrow to look at your leg. We'll also talk to H. Get your leave extended properly. And your job? Don't worry about it right now." Eleanor's mouth opened in protest, but Rebecca raised her hand. "This isn't charity. This is community. Any one of us could be in your place." When she left, she promised to return the next morning with Janet and Michael, the nurse. She paused at the door, glanced back once. Family shows up. No excuses. Eleanor sat in silence long after she was gone. The apartment, now cleaner and lighter, felt less like a prison. She looked at the plate on the table. The blankets folded beside her. The bowl of pills, finally organized. Something had shifted. Not everything was fixed. Not yet. But for the first time she wasn't facing the darkness alone. And that changed everything. With people now stepping forward where her family had disappeared, Eleanor's recovery was no longer a silent, uphill battle. It was about to become a shared journey, and one that would begin to rebuild her, piece by fragile piece. The next morning, true to her word, Rebecca returned. This time with Janet Wilson, Eleanor's supervisor, and Janet's partner Michael, a registered nurse. Eleanor watched from the couch, legs propped up on cushions as they entered with quiet efficiency. No one asked intrusive questions. No one commented on the smell of old takeout or the dusty blinds. Instead, Michael gently examined her surgical sites while Janet took notes and Rebecca moved through the kitchen, starting coffee without asking. Michael's face shifted from neutral to mildly concerned. "There's inflammation. Not infected yet, but you were close," he said, rinsing his hands. "You need consistent care and soon." He redressed the wounds, showed Janet how to monitor them, and made a list of medical supplies. Then he leaned toward Eleanor and said, "You're doing better than you think, Eleanor. The fact that you're still holding on through all this, that matters." Something about that sentence landed deeper than expected. Because she hadn't felt like she was holding on at all. That same afternoon, Janet called Eleanor's orthopedic clinic and refused to be brushed off. She recently had major surgery. She's immobile. She needs to be seen now, she said, firm but respectful. Within an hour, a new appointment was arranged for Friday, and the receptionist promised to coordinate transportation with a hospital social worker. Janet's efficiency was matched only by her empathy. As they finalized the schedule for the week, Eleanor tried to protest. This is too much. I can't ask everyone to. You didn't, Janet interrupted gently. We offered. Let people do what they can. It's not weakness. It's what community looks like. That evening, Eleanor sat in a freshly made bed, a clean t-shirt clinging to damp skin after her first assisted sponge bath in days. Her hair had been washed and towel-dried. Her sheets smelled of lavender detergent. The pain was still there, dull and persistent, but something else now cut through it: relief. The following days passed in a rhythm she hadn't known she needed. Different colleagues rotated in. Stephanie from Creative arrived with her laptop and helped Eleanor catch up on industry news. Marcus, the quiet intern, brought soup his grandmother had made. Thomas from accounting went over her mounting medical bills and began setting up payment plans. Each of them brought something useful. But more importantly, they brought something emotional: presence. Jessica Torres, a home health aide referred by the hospital's social worker, started visiting 3 times a week. Her fees were partially covered by insurance and supplemented by Eleanor's company's disability benefits. Jessica was calm, warm, and methodical. He treated Eleanor like a human being, not a task. You're doing better than many patients I've seen with similar injuries, she said during her second visit, as she helped Eleanor shift her weight to avoid pressure sores. You've got grit. That's not something anyone can teach you. Amy Chun, a physical therapist with a background in post-traumatic rehab, began in-home sessions the next week. Her approach was gentle but unyielding. Stretching Eleanor's legs. Testing movement. Encouraging breathing through pain. Recovery isn't linear, Amy reminded her one morning, when Eleanor had broken down during a particularly difficult set of exercises. Some days you move forward. Some days you don't. The important part is, you're still moving. Encouraged by Jessica, Eleanor joined a virtual support group for accident survivors. She didn't speak during the first 2 sessions. Just listened. Listened to people talk about phantom pain, about guilt, about feeling like a burden. There was comfort in the familiarity. A woman named Diana Moore, who had suffered a spinal injury the year before, became a kind of informal mentor. The hardest part, Diana said during a video chat, is learning how to ask for help and not hate yourself for needing it. But independence doesn't mean isolation. It means knowing when to reach out. That sentence stayed with Eleanor. He began practicing it. She asked Thomas to help her reorder medications. He told Stephanie what snacks she actually craved. She admitted to Amy when she was too sore to keep going. She let people see the truth, not the polished version but the honest one. Then one evening her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Madison. She answered on the 3rd ring. Ellie. Her sister's voice was quiet, unsure. Can you talk? Eleanor hesitated. Yeah. For a minute. I'm using the hotel Wi-Fi so they won't see it on the plan, Madison whispered. They told me not to contact you. Said it would ruin the trip. Eleanor said nothing. I knew it was wrong. But I didn't say anything. I'm so sorry. The apology was sincere but insufficient. Not yet. Still, Eleanor found herself saying, I appreciate you calling. But I'm not ready to pretend everything's okay. I get that, Madison whispered. I'll call again when I can. I just needed you to know. When the call ended, Eleanor sat in silence. She didn't know if her relationship with her sister could ever go back to what it was. But for the first time she realized she didn't need it to. And for the first time since the crash she stood, using the walker one shaky step at a time, toward something new. It was a Tuesday afternoon when they returned. Eleanor was halfway through a physical therapy session with Amy, practicing slow, controlled steps across the living room using her walker. Rebecca and Thomas sat at the dining table, reviewing her insurance paperwork, while a crock pot bubbled in the corner with soup Stephanie had dropped off earlier. The room was quiet, focused, and full of purpose. Then the door clicked. They still had her spare key. The sound of it turning in the lock made Eleanor's breath catch. She didn't expect them until the weekend. But there they were, Richard and Linda Hayes, walking into her apartment as if nothing had happened. Madison trailed behind, holding a tote bag covered in airport tags. Her eyes flicked nervously around the room. Eleanor froze. So did everyone else. Richard held a paper shopping bag with New Zealand made printed across it. Linda wore sunglasses on her head and an expression of mild confusion. Well, Linda said, scanning the unfamiliar faces, it looks like someone's been busy. Rebecca stood slowly. Thomas closed the folder in front of him. Amy offered a polite nod and stepped aside as Eleanor gripped the walker and straightened her back. You're not alone, Richard remarked, clearly surprised. No, Eleanor said quietly. I'm not. There was a beat of silence before Linda spoke again. We brought you gifts. A scarf, some honey, and this little kiwi bird plush. Thought it would brighten your space. She reached into the bag and placed the stuffed toy on the table like it might erase the previous month. Eleanor glanced at it, then back at her parents. Thanks. We didn't expect your friends here, Richard said, the slightest edge creeping into his voice. They're not just friends, Eleanor replied. They've been helping me recover. Madison shifted uncomfortably by the door, still saying nothing. Rebecca turned toward Eleanor. We should give you all some space, she said gently. Amy nodded in agreement. Let's continue the session tomorrow. Thomas stood, collected the papers, and paused before leaving. He looked at Eleanor and gave her a subtle nod, the kind of quiet reassurance that carried weight. As they filed out, Rebecca leaned in close and whispered, Call us if you need anything. The door closed behind them. And then it was just Eleanor, standing with her walker, facing her parents and the sister who had gone silent for weeks. We're back now, Linda said, dusting off her hands. You won't have to rely on outsiders anymore. We can take over. Eleanor stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she moved to the couch and sat down. You still have my key, she said. Please return it. Linda blinked. What? You lost the right to walk into my life without knocking the day you walked out of it. Richard frowned. You don't need to make this dramatic. I'm not, Eleanor said, voice level. I'm being clear. Linda's lips tightened. We raised you. We've done a lot for you, Eleanor. And I've thanked you for that, Eleanor said. But parenthood doesn't end because it's inconvenient. You abandoned me. I begged you to stay. I was terrified, in pain, and you told me not to call while you were happy. Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. Linda crossed her arms. You've always been independent, she said coldly. We thought you could manage. I did manage. But not because of you. She gestured toward the door. Rebecca helped me bathe. Janet got me medical transport. Jessica cleaned my wounds. Amy helped me walk again. Not you. There was a heavy pause. Then Madison, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. She's right. Everyone turned. What we did, what I did, it was wrong, Madison said, her voice trembling. I knew it. I felt it the whole trip. And I said nothing. Linda looked stunned. After everything we gave you, Madison. It's not about sides, Madison cut in. It's about doing the right thing. Eleanor needed us and we left. No scarf or souvenir is going to fix that. Richard sat down as if deflated. Eleanor didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply exhaled. I'm not cutting you out of my life, she said. But things will be different now. I'm setting boundaries. And you'll respect them, or you won't be welcome here at all. Linda stood, furious but speechless. We'll talk later, she muttered. When you're less emotional. No, Eleanor said. We'll talk when you're more honest. Madison didn't follow them to the door. She stayed behind as their parents left in a cloud of uncomfortable silence. After a while she sat beside Eleanor. Can I come back tomorrow? She asked. I'd like to actually help, if you'll let me. Eleanor nodded once. And for the first time between them nothing needed to be said. 6 months after the accident, Eleanor walked into her office building for the first time, not with total ease but with purpose. Her steps were careful, slightly uneven, aided by a subtle brace beneath her slacks, but they were hers. No wheelchair. No walker. Just determination in motion. As she passed the glass doors, her reflection caught her eye. She paused. For the first time in months she didn't see a patient. She saw a woman standing again on her own terms. Her return to work had been gradual, starting with part-time remote projects, then flexible hours in office. Janet had arranged a private workspace near the elevator to reduce strain. Stephanie and Marcus decorated the desk with flowers and post-it notes filled with welcome-back messages. The team had not only filled the void when her family vanished, they'd filled it with something stronger than obligation. Real care. Real community. Outside of work, Eleanor's apartment no longer looked like a sick room. The tray tables were gone. Medical supplies tucked away. The living room now held framed photos. Not of vacations with parents, but of Friday night dinners with the people who showed up. Rebecca stirring soup. Thomas holding a deck of cards. Jessica laughing mid-conversation. These weren't just snapshots. They were proof. Madison had moved into her own apartment just a few blocks away. Free from the shadow of their parents' influence, she'd started a new job at a nonprofit. Every Thursday she and Eleanor met for dinner, Real sister dinners, for the first time in their lives. There were still hard conversations, still moments of awkward apology, but something honest had begun to take root between them. Trust. The relationship with Richard and Linda remained distant. Surface-level texts. Occasional calls. An invitation to Thanksgiving that Eleanor politely declined. They had returned from New Zealand expecting to resume their role in her life as if nothing had changed. But everything had. She no longer felt obligated to play the daughter they preferred. She wasn't angry anymore. Just clear. And that clarity was freedom. One Friday evening her living room buzzed with voices and clinking glasses. Stephanie had brought cupcakes. Thomas manned the music playlist. Even Amy stopped by after a long shift. Rebecca, as always, was last to arrive, carrying a small cake in a white box. On it, in looping blue frosting, were the words, "Eleanor the Indomitable." Laughter rose around the table as the candles were lit. Eleanor closed her eyes, not to make a wish but to take in the moment. These people, once acquaintances, co-workers, strangers, had become her chosen family. They had carried her through when her biological one had walked away. As the party settled into soft music and slower conversation, Eleanor stepped into the hallway for a moment alone. She pulled out her phone, thumbed through photos, then paused at one she hadn't seen in weeks. A picture her parents had posted from their trip. Smiling, arms around Madison Vineyard behind them. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever." She looked at it now with detachment. No sting. No ache. Just distance. And then, without hesitation, she deleted it. Rebecca joined her outside a few minutes later, sipping sparkling water. She leaned against the wall beside Eleanor, quiet. "You okay?" she asked. Eleanor nodded. "Yeah. Better than okay." Rebecca smiled. "You did the hard part." "No," Eleanor said. "I did the necessary part. The hard part was pretending I didn't need anyone. This is real." They stood together in silence, letting the moment breathe. Later that week, Eleanor returned to her virtual support group and shared her story for the first time. From the accident to the abandonment, from the nights of silent pain to the knock at the door. She ended with a truth that had taken her months to understand. "Family isn't about who shares your last name," she said, her voice steady. "It's about who shows up, who stays, and who sees you even when you don't know how to ask for help." The group was quiet for a moment. Then one by one voices chimed in, affirmations, acknowledgments, their own reflections. That night, Eleanor wrote a letter to herself. Not to the person she was before the crash, but to the version that had survived. She signed it with one word, deserving. Not just of healing but of happiness. The road ahead would still have hills. Pain would still echo. But she no longer walked it alone. And as she stepped into her next chapter, each step, however imperfect, was chosen. Firm, clear, and fully hers. Eleanor's journey reminds us that sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't physical. They're the ones left by the people we expected to stand by us. But in losing what she thought she needed, she found what truly mattered. People who chose to stay not out of duty but out of genuine care. Her strength wasn't just in recovery. It was in reclaiming her voice, her space, and her right to draw the line between pain and healing. Now she walks forward not with bitterness but with clarity. And maybe that's the greatest comeback of all. Have you ever been let down by the people you thought would be there for you? Share your story in the comments. We're listening. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful journeys of strength, survival, and self-worth.